If you're a man committed to creating a marriage that moves your soul, making meaningful memories with your kids, and living a life aligned with your deepest values, this conversation's going to be for you. In the last episode we had with Dr. Philip Oubre, we took a deep dive into his views on health. If you didn't hear that show, go check it out. As a functional medicine doc, his approach extends far beyond traditional medicine. But today I'm sitting down with Dr. Oubre and discussing his personal journey over the years in marriage and fatherhood, including navigating his divorce, which ultimately led to discovering how he wanted to cultivate relationships rooted in authenticity and alignment. Beyond his professional successes, it's his pursuit in creating a healthy marriage and breaking generational patterns and being present with his kids. That's what truly defines him. And in this episode, he talks about redefining strength in his life, why family extends beyond blood ties, and the power of simply showing up for those who matter most. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Let's begin the journey with you as a child. And I'm really excited to hear what life was like for you growing up, because I know none of it. I don't know anything about your past or your history, but, you know, and we can take anywhere in the 0 to 18 range that you want. Mm-hmm. For me, the lights really came on like around 7 years old. I tend to, that's when I remember a lot. I remember things happening. But through your childhood, maybe you can just unpack a little bit about what your relationship was like with your dad, or your mom, or your siblings, or whatever father figure, but just thinking about the parenting, realm and the impact that it had on you.
So all of those are complex relationships to today. So I've got mom and dad still married, still together, and I've got older brother, younger brother. So I'm the proverbial middle child syndrome and all. And so my childhood, pretty simply, was my parents were hardworking people. I call them children, grandchildren of the Great Depression. My father-in-law doesn't like that. He says they weren't. But I'm like, I don't know. They talked about the Great Depression. Like, it was close enough to them that they felt the impacts, and they treated their lives and finances a lot differently. So they had a bit of a scarcity mindset and saving everything and no loans kind of deal. And we worked hard. So I grew up in South Louisiana, a very small town called Prairieville. We say Purville. And so hardly anybody knows, although I'm surprised at how many people I run into that actually know where that is. And so we had 10 acres, and we called it the farm, but we had chickens and animals and stuff. And we spent a lot of time as kids working on the farm. That was our weekends. We were cleaning chicken coops, cutting grass, chopping firewood for the winter, and everything that comes with managing 10 acres. So we spent a lot of time working in the yard and not knowing really anything different. We didn't really do a whole lot of fun activities and things. Both my parents worked. My mom was a school teacher. She taught high school math. Students either loved her or hated her. She was one of those teachers.
As is with many teachers.
The ones that care. I mean, she was serious, she cared, and she didn't let you get away with anything. Yeah. So even the bad ones kind of liked her in a weird way.
Yeah, respect.
She was loved and hated in high school. And then my father worked for a chemical plant, which is pretty common in South Louisiana. That's what a lot of the kids out of high school and stuff do. And so he worked his way up on the chemical plant. It was a drive out of town. I think he had to commute 30, 45 minutes. So we didn't see a lot of my dad on the working days. I mean, he luckily had gotten promoted over time, kind of had a 8 to 5 gig. But 8 to 5, when you got a 45-minute commute, doesn't really leave much time for kids. You got early bedtime and stuff. So,
did you feel that, by the way, at that time? Or was it just kind of like, that's how life is?
That's how life was, yeah. Because my father, he showed up. He was there. Yeah. I cry easily, by the way. So that's not even an emotional thing. But, yeah, he was there. He showed up for baseball games and stuff.
I think that is an emotional thing, man.
Well, we haven't gotten to the emotional part, but it will. So yeah, as a kid, he was there. He was supportive. He led by example. As a younger kid, I wanted to be my dad. Mom would complain. If we went to a grocery store with dad, it would take twice as long as he talked to everyone. Mm-hmm. That was my dad. That's not who my dad is nowadays, and that's disappointing. But yeah, my dad was a character. He made people laugh. He was entertaining, and he showed up. I mean, other than work, he was there, basically.
That's cool.
And mom was there more often because she was the teacher, so she got off earlier and stuff. So Mom was definitely there more, and she was at all the baseball practices reluctantly. Such a boring sport to watch, as she has reminded me many times.
Yeah, for real.
But yeah, they were great supportive parents. They had I would classify a good marriage. Not a perfect marriage. I don't think that really exists. At least I haven't found it yet. Mine's about as close to perfect as I could ever imagine. So yeah, they had a good marriage, but definitely stressful, and they have done well for themselves financially and everything, but it came at a price, and my childhood was kind of part of the price. Not that I regret it at all. I wouldn't change a single thing about how the way I grew up and who I became, because that's who I am. But yeah, I don't remember the question, but that was a sense of
it was a
childhood.
very broad stroke question of like your childhood. So let me dig a little more specific.
Yeah.
Where did you feel loved by your dad?
We did not use words like "I love you," and we did not have emotional talks. We had a very superficial relationship. I can remember my mom was more lovey, emotional than dad, as typically they are. But even then, we don't have a very open emotional relationship. We give hugs when we arrive, and we give hugs when we leave. But it's never a touchy-feely relationship, which is so weird because I'm the opposite. I am I was talking to love language with a patient of mine, and he said I'm a dog. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? It's like, you just spend time with me and pet me, and I'm happy.
Good to go.
So
Feed him.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm touchy-feely. That's who I am. And my parents are not touchy-feely.
Yeah.
Definitely a mismatch of love languages. It's not that they did not love or fully support. They're the reason I'm a medical doctor. Solely, I'd even say my mom is the only reason I'm a medical doctor. That's a fun story. But yeah, no love, no open verbal communication. In fact, it was interesting. As I was going through college and getting more distant, just physically, I went to college 4 hours away in Shreveport, a bummer town. But I would spend time with my folks, and then I'd drive away, and my dad would send me really thoughtful, like well-worded, deep emails. Like, who are you? Why didn't we talk about this in person?
Yeah.
Why can this only come out in writing after I've left? So I think he struggled and struggles with that macho man, and he's definitely not like the gym rat or anything macho man, but I think he's a consequence of that era of you're a man, you go to work, and you don't use soft language.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. For many reasons, that makes sense. And my dad is very similar with the written word, by the way.
Really?
He would rather, his preference would be if I have something to talk about that's deep, to write a letter and send it and let him sit with it. So it's
Interesting.
not to be put on the spot,
Right.
with like a deep back and forth per se.
Yeah.
Although we've had great conversations, but I can really relate to that. And I
I'll
understand.
catch myself doing that too at times. Like, no, I should be able to say these things in person. I should be able to tell someone I love them, even if it's a little uncomfortable, especially because I'm remarried and getting into another family and meeting adult kids and getting to the point of telling them, like, you matter to me enough that I can tell you I love you. Yeah. That feels weird to another female adult and to another male adult. That's not macho, but I don't want them to grow up the way I did. I want them to know it's okay to use those words. It's good to use those words. And if this is the last time I see you, I want you to know that.
Yeah. I appreciate that so
Well, you're
much.
really tapping the heartstrings early, John.
Good. Yeah. Well, I didn't show up here to have some BS topical conversation, man.
Here we are.
I want to get to the root of it. And know your heart, man. That's why I like this so much. I really want to get to know somebody's heart.
Oh, it's on the outside. It's right there.
Yes. Tell me about your also like a painful experience that might have shaped you. Something that, was hard that you went through that today pain became purpose for you.
I mean, I think we all have a myriad of those. Which one to choose? I guess one for the purposes of this podcast is I did become a medical doctor, and it was not an easy road. I was not selected for 3 years in a row. So
What does that mean, not selected?
So the way the process works is, of course, you finish high school, then you go to college. Nearing the end of college, you start applying for medical school, and then you can either get an interview, and if you get an interview, then you might get selected or put on a wait list. 2 years go by and I didn't even get an interview. And I had no backup plan. This was the plan. When I was a little kid, I broke my arm. I was like 5 or 6 years old. I don't remember. My mom always reminds me. And broke my arm, and I said, I want to be a bone doctor. And that's what I grew up saying. I wanted to be a bone doctor. I'm not an orthopedist. I'm not a bone doctor. Thank God I don't like that at all anymore. But that was my only plan. And I was good at science. I was good at math. I did great in school. And I did not get accepted to medical school. The third year, I at least got an interview, and I got put on the wait list. And at that point, it was like, by the time the third year comes around, it's kind of over.
Why do you think you didn't get, what is it? I mean, great grades, great human?
So I can give you my reason why. I think it's more of a God thing of why, because I'm so grateful I did not get in. I was in Louisiana. There's a few problems. Number one is Louisiana is very corrupt. Everybody knows that. So if you were a physician's son, you got in. I had a buddy of mine that got worse scores and grades than me, and he got in. And that hurt a little bit, but that wasn't my path. My dad worked at a chemical plant. There was not a doctor in the family anywhere in the lineage. I think there was a vet many years ago. And that was number one. Number two is I went to a small Louisiana LSU school, LSU in Shreveport, and I thought going to a small school would mean I got a better education. I do feel like I got a better education. But the bad news is when there's only 10 kids in a class and one whose name may be Blake just crushes the test. There's no curve. Like, I am the dude that got the B. Second place, I got the B. And in med school, I mean, it is stupid competitive. These kids have 4.0s all over the place. Yeah. So the bigger schools, you just got to be in the top 10% to get the A. Well, second place is not 10% in a small school. So that was part of it. The other part of it is I didn't realize, so Shreveport actually has the second medical school in the state, but they actually looked down on the LSU and Shreveport College. So my degree was frowned upon. I did not have a 4.0, and I didn't have a physician in the family. And I hate to say it, but I don't know if you've met many doctors that actually have personality. The majority, this is bad, but the majority of people on the medical school committees accepting students are total nerds that are not actually great physicians, because great physicians are out there talking to patients, doing the right thing, not sitting on a medical student acceptance committee. So in my opinion, they weren't looking for personality. They were simply looking for grades, and that's not what makes a great doctor. Might make a great engineer. That's fantastic. But as a doctor, your most important part is to make changes in a patient, and you can only do that if you can relate to them. You can have the greatest brain, you can be the smartest person, but you can't actually relate to that patient. And I'm not that person. I had to work hard. And my mom always reminded me that I was not the born genius. I had to work hard, and I liked working hard, and I did fine. I've done great. I've made great grades, but I had to work harder than the next person, and I didn't get the 4.0. So that's my reason.
That's cool.
So I went to a Caribbean school because I did officially get into medical school, just so we're aware I'm a real doctor. So I went to a Caribbean school, which is a short version of the story, is a loophole in the medical system. There's not enough medical schools, or there's not enough medical student slots in America for the doctors we need. So there's a loophole. You go to the Caribbean, you do your 2 years of book training in the Caribbean, and then you re-enter the American medical school as a foreign graduate, they call it. So you become a U.S.-based doctor. Nobody knows after I finish residency. Basically, nobody knows I'm a foreign grad, but basically it's a loophole because the states have to fund medical students, and we need more medical students than the states can afford. So the Caribbean became the extra
Is that where you
space.
lived for a couple of years?
Yeah, lived in Dominica, small island.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah, it was a fascinating experience. Like I said, so glad I didn't go to a Louisiana school, because I lived in Dominica for 2 years. I lived in Miami for 6 months, and I lived in New York City, which was not my favorite place in the world, for 2 years. Then I did my residency in South Carolina for 3 years until I said I want to move to Texas. That's home.
Wow. Where in South Carolina?
Columbia.
Okay. I was in Charleston for a little bit.
Way prettier. Columbia. We called it the armpit of South Carolina because it's like this bowl, and Columbia exists in the middle of the bowl. Yeah. So it was just humid. The air never moved. I loved my time there, but man, it felt hotter than Austin in Columbia, just sweating, sticky.
Oh. What value did you most take from your dad that you can look back now and say, man, I got that from him. So glad I got that from him. I wanted to replicate that, or you find yourself maybe saying the same things he did?
Yeah, I'd say hard work. My dad works. He probably works just as hard retired as he does before he retired. So that man just puts his head down. He's worked ever since he was a kid. His dad died at a young age, so I don't think he had the greatest role model. I want to say he was like in his teens when his dad died of an aneurysm. And so, yeah. And so he just worked. His family had nothing. He started working, was supporting his mom and his sister and all kinds of stuff. So I definitely got that. But my mom too, though. My mom's a school teacher. She's a no nonsense person. So both of them, I definitely got the hard work ethic. The part I feel like I got from him that I want to give him credit to, even though I don't see it in him anymore, is the personality. Like my dad was that social butterfly that could talk to anyone, walk up to a total stranger and just start talking to him. And I specifically remember being about 16 years old and wanting to be that, but I was a nerd. I mean, you look at I was a trumpet player, band nerd. I couldn't talk to anybody to save my life. And there were two people that made a major impact in my life. One, I wanted to be like my dad. And second, there was this senior in high school that everyone loved him. He was also a nerd, but he could walk up to anybody in the entire school and just chit-chat. He shook people's hands, which at 18, nobody shakes hands. And so I was like, I want to be like that guy. And so the next year I showed up, I just started being more like that guy, shaking people's hands, saying, hey, good to see you kind of stuff. And it really broke my shell, not so much in high school, but it started to convert. But I still remember the day I left for college. I remember driving down the road and just feeling free and knowing I could create a totally new identity that no one knew. So when I started my first days of college, no one knew I was a total nerd other than how I looked like a total nerd. I was the most friendly person. I knew everyone. By the end of college, I couldn't walk across campus without taking way too long because I knew so many people.
That's
and
cool.
So that was one of those traits that I thought I got from my dad, or at least imagined from my dad.
That's awesome. And now here you are living in Texas, awesome family and awesome career, which I wouldn't get to that because that's how we got introduced.
Right.
So we'll get there. I want to talk about your family now and your views on family life, which could be parenting and marriage and all of the things that you want to include in that. But let's start with the big question of kind of a purpose question, which is, why does family matter so much to you now? Are there guiding principles, values, a mantra, a phrase that kind of encompasses who you are as a family man?
That's a good question. There's definitely no mantra or message or anything. I can definitely say my parents, we were not a big family. We were a small family, so it was always family. That's kind of all we had, and so I've kind of always had that. I don't know why, and I tell my wife this because she wasn't the same way, but I've always wanted to be a married man. Don't know what it is. I had terrible luck with women. I was basically 90-something% single until I met my first wife, and I was 27. And so we were married for 7 years. But I always knew I wanted to be a family man. I always knew I wanted kids. And I realized I talked to my grown stepchildren, and they're like, nope, don't want any, not right now, maybe later. And that's just wild to me. If I had met a woman at 19, I probably would have married her and had kids at 20. That's just the kind of person I wanted to be. College and med school and being a dork thwarted all of that. Med school helped a bit. And so I just knew that having kids was a giant responsibility, and I wanted them, as most parents do, I wanted them to get the shortcuts on life and learn the things that I had to learn the hard way, but I still wanted them to learn it, knowing that you can't give them the cheat codes because so much of life is based on adversity. And some of the greatest people you ever see on podcasts and stuff, they've had terrible lives. Yeah. So it's not about the past, it's about what you did with the past. And so I wanted to be there for my kids to weather all of those, not save them from every bump knee, but help them through the experience of the skin knee and the hurt. I'm not to the boyfriend, girlfriend stages yet. We're getting there. I got a 12-year-old. But yeah, that's incredibly important to me. And as a Christian, I just believe that that's my number one mission, is to raise amazing children to do amazing things. And I don't just mean make money. I mean impact the world, change the world, and get to heaven. I should have said that backwards. Like they need to get to heaven. That's mission number one. And if I'm not there, why would they ever listen to me on that? And if I'm not a Christian, if I'm not going to church, if I'm not praying, if I'm not reading my Bible, why would they ever do it? And so those two things have always been there. When I moved to Austin, I started working for a doctor here. His name's Dr. Sneed, and he's since retired. But he introduced a term to me called family. And my family's a bit distant. I'm the black sheep. I do not fit in my family at all. I don't make sense. I'm not like them. And so being in Austin without any family, they introduced the term family to me. And what that means to me is there may not be genetic related people to you, but they're so important that you would drop anything, just like you would drop anything for your genetic relative. I mean, thinking of wives, they're not genetic relatives, but they sure as hell are more important than most people. So family. And so my wife and I met with the pastor at our church recently, and he gave us an exercise that he had done with a small group recently about creating the values for your family. And so it sounded kind of silly at first, but we really took it to heart and designed our values. And so we have 5 values. I've got my daughter drawing a logo around the 5 values and things. But number 2 is family, not family, because there's people.
Hey guys, I want to share something brand new designed for high-performing men like you who want to win at home, not just at work. Our team developed this program over the past 8 years by collecting the best ideas, strategies, and habits from hundreds of men. It's all in one place to give you the best results in the shortest amount of time, because if you're a married man with kids and a business, there is no time to waste. This experience creates deep transformation, not just taking notes and talking about change. It's about doing what matters now so you don't miss the moments when your kids need you the most. These opportunities will come and go very quickly. It's also about building a marriage that shows your kids what real love looks like, creating an environment where they and you thrive. Look, marriage is tough. I've personally walked the line of divorce several times, and without the tools I've gained from this community, I might not be married today. And it's not just about being a great dad or a husband. It's about fulfilling your personal mission, thriving as a man, making an impact through your work, gaining time freedom, financial freedom, traveling the world, and giving to the causes you care about. This program is designed to keep you mentally, physically, and spiritually strong. You do not need to do this alone. Our badass community of intentional fathers are going to help you raise the bar. You're going to learn from each other, hold each other accountable, find your blind spots, and achieve success most dads will never see. It's time to dig deep, gain clarity, and create real change starting now. If you're ready to evolve, visit frontrowdads.com today. We've got limited spots available for this brand new program
that have been incorporated into our lives that mean so much to us, and we impact them, they impact us, and they're not related by any means, not married, just friends. Yeah. And how can we continue to impact our community? Like you mentioned outside when we were talking, community is the most important thing we have, whether it be work community or church community or friend community. So family is immensely important to me and my family.
I love that. Where was the last time that you did something as a dad where you're like, I'm killing it?
Oh.
I don't need anybody to pat me on my back. I know I'm doing a good job as a dad.
You know what? I can honestly say I don't think I've done anything where anyone would be impressed, but
you were impressed.
Yeah, I would say just simply showing up for my son plays soccer, not very well, but we play soccer. And just simply being there at a soccer practice and being there the whole time. And occasionally I've had to do some work on my computer, but more often I try to just be there watching the soccer practice, even though it changes nothing for me watching it. But it makes me feel proud to know that I'm here. I'm giving him the time. I showed up. He sees me. He knows I'm there. That's important to him. And I know when I'm working on the computer or something, he's wishing I weren't. And I'm also proud to say that multiple other dads are at the soccer field, and we actually have more dads there than moms there.
Yeah, interesting.
And these are accomplished, these are successful men, and they're choosing to be there because I'm sure, like you can choose to be at work. You can do other things. I could accomplish more at work. I could impact more people. I could touch more people with work. And I will do that. I do want to do that. But my family is much more important, and I got to be there for them. Otherwise, what's the point in this life?
Yeah.
Someone else can impact people too.
That's why front row dads. This idea of being engaged, being close. There's so much credit or so much to a entrepreneur, business owner put on be in the arena.
Yeah.
Right? That idea of and showing your kids is so important to how to work hard. But also putting them on stage, putting them in the field, and you becoming their front row, you becoming the fan.
Yeah.
That's an essential part, I think, of growth as a father, is being able to table your own egoic needs and accomplishments, and to send that last email and connect with that last person. Because I started by asking you the question of where did you know you were a great dad? You shared a story, but reminds me of a time when I realized I was a terrible dad, which was at a basketball game for Tiger, who's now 15, and Tiger was playing basketball, and dude, I was on my phone, and he made his first basket, and dude looked at me and saw me on my phone, and came to me later, this was a conversation we had to have.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't see his first basket because I had to check whoever just texted me.
Yeah.
That stung, man. And I remember where I was standing, and I remember
Crystal
the
clear,
feeling of knowing that it just happened, because
and you can't
I
take
heard
it back.
the cheering, and then I looked up and I saw him running back, and then he looked at me after I looked up, right? And after his friends were high-fiving him, and I'm like, I think he just scored his first basket, and I missed it. So now Ocean, who's 10, Tiger's probably about 10 around that time, he's taking jujitsu, not too far from where we are right now. And when I'm there, and I'm not perfect, but 98% of the time, I'm
I'm there
watching him. Or I have a video, and I take a video of him. And then at the end, with the video now, I've been saying, so I'm so proud of myself when I get in the car and I show him the video, because he knows I was watching. I show him the video, and I go, look, here's what I love about what you did.
Oh.
And I wonder if you did this next time, what would happen? So I always do those two things. Here's what I love about what you did. I love you were persistent. I love that you tried what the coach said. I love that you listened. I love whatever. And I wonder what would happen if you would have, when you grabbed their knees, driven through instead of fallen back. And when I noticed, the next day, he'll drive through.
Yeah.
And then he'll come to me and he's like, you see, I drove through. And I was like, and these are 10-second commentaries.
Yeah.
They don't have to be 30-minute speeches, but
when he's on this side of the microphone, that's the story he's going to be saying.
Maybe.
My dad used to.
Yeah.
And now not now, then he. So I think you're making an impact on a child, your child.
Yeah.
And doing a great job, because I've done some of that with last season. I'm going to make a better point of that now you say that, recording and going over it, because he's young. He's got a lot to learn. I don't know anything about soccer, but I at least know more than he does about soccer. And I've given him a couple pointers, and it did not go well. So I think that key part was, hey, here are the things I love that you did. And what I've told him is I don't care if you're that great, but you will work hard. You will. When the coach says something, you will respond. You will run as fast as you can. You will hustle, all that. That's all I care about. But then if there's something I can teach him, I'd love to teach him, because when we're in our own element, you can't see it, but you can from the outside. But showing up that you love what he did first instead of
and it's even being just curious about the what if would happen, what would happen if, versus this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
This will make you a champion, because it can. To me, it's it's modeling how I could approach everything. What if I did this? What if I treated a patient this way? What if So that's cool.
I love that.
Talk to me about your marriage for a moment, because you're married to an awesome person.
The best. She's taken, guys. Everyone has second place after her.
Incredible energy. Yeah. So quick backstory for anybody listening. The way we got connected was Hal, who many people listening to the show know he's one of my best friends.
Yeah.
He's Uncle Hal. So very important part of my life. He came to see you
Yeah.
because shout out to another one of our friends, Mike Dillard, who came to see you. I don't think I'm releasing anything I shouldn't say.
No.
Okay.
No,
I think he's been pretty vocal about it.
Yeah, he has.
Yeah. So anyway, these people who had been in your care were very impressed. And I came to you because I'm dealing with this high C-reactive protein number and some low iron and needed to get help. So we'll get into more of that in a little bit. But that's how we met. That's how we got connected. And then I wanted to tie this back to Laura for a minute because I was coming to your clinic and I was being cared for by this amazing person, super engaging, just all heart and wanting to help.
Yeah,
And
that's a good description.
And Hal and I talk about how awesome she was.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I just wanted to give Laura some praise on the show.
Yeah.
And I wanted to acknowledge that your partner is incredible, man.
Yeah,
So what's your love story? How did you guys meet?
It's lame.
Good, all right.
So,
It just helps other people know that you can find love in all sorts of ways.
Yes, absolutely. Dork.
Yeah.
It worked. I nailed it. So sadly, it's just a Bumble story. My version.
Why is
of
that
it-
sad, though? It's great, man.
It's the modern age.
That's awesome.
It's the modern age. So kind of my story is I did divorce differently than she did divorce. And everyone's got their own divorce process. But the way I did divorce was after I got divorced, I knew that I wasn't the problem. No, kidding. I knew I had problems in the divorce. And so I knew I needed to work on that. So I took a year of no dating, no nothing. And that's pretty easy for me because, I have to work to get dates. Laura doesn't have to work to get dates. That they just come to her. So that was pretty easy. And I specifically spent time becoming who I wanted to be, going to therapy, spending significant time reflecting on who I had become in the marriage, who I wanted to be in my next marriage, who I wanted to be with in my next marriage, and how I realized I'd rather be single than with the wrong person. And I was so, like I told you earlier, I've always wanted to be married. That I think that was part of my flaw in the first marriage was I had it looked good. I guess I don't want to go into too much detail. It's her story. We're not together anymore. But I wasn't who I wanted to be. And it was through medical school. It was through residency, which is just a odd time for anyone. It's just a hard time for anyone and everyone. And after residency is when getting into regular practice and having an 8-to-5 job, I started to realize, like, who am I? Who do I want to be? And you still have to put in a lot of hours outside of work, even after residency and when you're seeing patients, because there's only so much you can be taught in residency, and there's only like a million things I still don't know in medicine. So you have to spend time outside of your patients still learning. And so I was working a lot, and at the time we got divorced, I had just opened my practice. I opened my practice in January 2016, and by May 2016, we were completely separated and kind of threw in the towel by December 2016. So here's 2017. I'm fully single, but I have a career, a company that I've started and is actually taking off. But I'm also working in the ER. So I didn't take a salary from my company for a year and a half. So I would still work a good 30, 40 hours at my office, which wasn't paying me any money. And I worked about 50, 60 hours a week in the ER. So I was working about 100 hours a week in order to pay my bills and support my children, and still had 50% custody of my children. And so I think one of the things I at least want to point out to dads is that in that situation, I was not a great dad, but I was still there. Luckily, the kids were small. They were 1 and 4, 1 and 3, so they didn't really know any different. Just being there, even if I was a zombie walking around the house, at least I was there feeding them and playing with them. So yeah, finished. By the time a year and a half passed, I was out of the ER. At least my practice was paying me a salary, and that's when I started to realize the type of man I wanted to be. Yes, I was working a lot of hours, but one of the fights I had gotten into with ex-wife, she kept calling me a workaholic, and I kept explaining, like, I'm working hard because I want to establish a different future. So yes, it looks like I have behavior of a workaholic right now, working 100 hours a week, but it's not because this is what I want to do the rest of my life. I want to create something so that I don't have to do this the rest of my life. These are the working years, right? Your late 20s and 30s, that's the time to buckle down and sit down. And I battled with that. I wrestled with that because when people call you something, narcissist, whatever evil word, negative word, or even kind word, you need to pause on that and reflect. Like, am I? I don't think I am, but I need to spend some time reflecting on that and truly asking myself what my motivations are and where I draw the line. And so at least now, fast forward, I can confidently say, I'm not a workaholic. I love my work-life balance. I am extremely blessed. I don't deserve this at all. I never expected to have this much success and or work-life balance and travel ever as a doctor. I don't know if you know this, but doctors don't really make that much money. They don't. And I went to family medicine, which is kind of the dumbest one. That's a long story in of itself. I'm not the dumbest one. But unfortunately, family medicine is known as the dumbest residency. And so we're notoriously not the highest paid. Pediatricians are like the only ones lower than us.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, so family doctors are the one of the lowest paid. And so I never went into this really for money. Doctors do well. Don't get me wrong. I'm not broke. Even as an old school family medicine doctor, I wasn't broke. But there's no scaling a family medicine practice. And so I don't remember the original question, and now I'm just rambling about my story. What was the original question?
Dude, this happens to me all the time, by the way. Like, but what's fascinating is I'm reliving so much of my life, like in these questions that I have. So I was a professional speaker, and sometimes I would be on stage, and I'm like, no idea where I'm going with any of this. But
what was my point again?
That felt good.
Where are we?
I think we were starting by talking about Laura and like how you
that's
guys,
right, my wife. How did I was talking about me?
How you guys got together, and
that's right.
And I think that what you were, what I gathered is like how you were ultimately leading up to like this crazy life that you led, ultimately leading up to Laura.
So I guess I can speed up that part. So I had practice is successful. I'm now getting more of that balance. Now, by the time I had met Laura, the practice was booming. I was doing really well. And it was at that shift where I needed to start seeing less patients but increasing prices. And that was difficult for me to do. But around that time is when I started to realize, like, okay, I've got stability now. I have patients, more patients than I can handle. I have money. We're fine. Bills are paid. Now I really want to be intentional about dating. And so I was very intentional about dating. I heard a quote recently, didn't know it back then, but they said you're either dating to marry or dating to break up. And I was like, okay, so if you're not dating to marry, you're just dating to break up. And I'm that dude that I dated to marry. I dated with intention. I dated someone, and at the moment I realized that I couldn't marry this person, I would break up with them. But ultimately, like, my mind would sour the relationship. Nothing was good enough at that point. And it's a tough battle because I was constantly asking myself, like, am I expecting something unrealistic? I know there's no perfect woman except Laura. No, she's not perfect. But I didn't want to be so selective that this person didn't exist. And I had to battle with that, especially in the swiping nature of the Bumble and all that. And that was the primary one I used. And so by the time I met Laura, I was probably single for a good 4 or 6 months before meeting Laura. And I still remember, so stupid. So most people know Bumble, and so you can swipe on people and whatnot. And I had narrowed my filter down so much because I realized, like, I will not date a woman that can't profess that she's a Christian. I don't want to see spiritual. I don't want to see not sure. If you can't admit you're Christian on an app, then I want someone that will make my walk with God even better. And so I had gotten my filter so low just by selecting Christian and someone that was actually a practicing Christian, or at least wanted to be better than they were, that I would go through all my swipes and they'd be all gone. I'm like, okay, well, I guess there's just no one out there. So I'll just wait another day, see if more people join the app or whatnot. And so this had gone on for at least a month. And I kept like expanding the search to non-Christian. And I was like, no, I can't do that. I won't do that. My first wife was an atheist, and that did not work for me. And so I was like, I'm not settling on that. I'd rather be single than not with a Christian woman that will help me be a better Christian. I was not who I wanted to be at that time, and I wanted to be even better. And so one morning I woke up, and what do we all do? We reach for our phone, and I had this gorgeous blonde that had chosen me. Why? I had the stupidest photos. She makes fun of them to this day. So stupid. And she was not dating to marry necessarily, but she wanted it. She wanted it. She wanted to be married and just hadn't found the right man is kind of the idea. And so we start chit-chatting and it just exploded. She's just, as you know, just such an easy person to talk to. She's funny. She's just larger than life. Everything's just amazing. And so we chit chat for a week. And in the typical dating world, you got to go on a date or it just disappears. And by the way, anyone that's not married, the greatest tip I give anyone that is dating is have a phone call with the person before you meet them. You can screen so many bad dates just by having a simple phone call. And so Laura loves to make fun of me. We were actually reliving this recently because the song came on. She called me when I was going to pick up my kids. I remember where I was turning. I had called her and she didn't answer and said, call you right back. She called me back. And I had a Esther Perel song playing in the car and I was singing as loud as I could. And she called back and I thought, here's my time to show someone who I really am. Like, I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to hide it. So I answered the phone. I was like, you just interrupted a great Esther Perel song. And I was singing at the top of my lungs. And I think she temporarily thought about just hanging up right there. Yeah. Like, who is this character? She's used to dating these macho men and all the things that macho men do that I do not do. And so we just had a quick little 20-second phone call, went pick up the kids, and then we met the next week. And we went to a restaurant that's now closed. That's a bad omen. And we talked.
That's more of a testament to the restaurant industry.
So we talked for 4 hours, and I made my famous quote at the end of the night that she still likes to make fun of me, but I was right. I did not pre-plan this. It came up at the spur of the moment because she's just such a amazing human being. She's not only gorgeous, she's just a great human being. I love her. It's so different than my first marriage. And I told her at the end of the night, I was like, what if this was our last first date? And her response was, uh-huh. She didn't say yes. She was like, what is wrong with this guy? I've only met you 4 hours ago, and I'm not there yet. And so it took her a few months to fall in love, but she eventually came around.
You didn't scare her off?
No, I got close to scaring her off because she wasn't fully ready for commitment.
Sure.
I mean, we all have, as second marriages, you have tons of trauma, tons of baggage that you're carrying around. And you got to work through that. We all have to work through it. And I shouldn't even say second marriages. There can be trauma in first marriages that you're still in.
It's funny because right when you said that, I thought of Esther Perel's quote, which is, and you may know this, you'll be married 2 or 3 times in your lifetime. Almost everybody will. The question is whether or not it's with the same person.
Yeah.
Makes tons of sense. I can clearly see that there's been 2 or 3 marriages for Tatiana and I over the last 18 years. No question. Maybe it's
good
like every 6 years we go through something pretty serious. I can think 2017 was a big time. Even up to last year, I mean, we were in deep dialogue, which I think is what happens in this deep dialogue place is you've changed, I've changed. Do we want to recommit to this new person?
Right.
I feel like you're different. I'm different.
Right.
What we signed up for 7 years ago or 14 years ago, like I was a different human. And can our core of love, will our core of love keep us together on the same path? So I don't have any judgment towards people who separate. I think some people separate probably too early.
Yeah.
And they miss the tools and they could have stayed together and had a great marriage. I think there's people that stayed together for the sake of staying that probably would be healthier to
That is unfortunately common. I do believe that's common.
But all of that is rooted in, hopefully for most humans, is increased self-awareness. The root is if I can have enough self-awareness, then I can choose the path properly, whatever path they're on.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm on a quest for every day, man, just having enough awareness to operate out of truth.
Agreed.
For myself and for the people that I love. Just be truthful. Yeah. Because I know there's still an ego present for John Roman. There's still an act that happens. I'm still in a matrixy blueprint, like I'm supposed to do life this way. I'm trying to break out of that as much as I possibly can, to make heart-centered decisions, powerful decisions.
I think that was one of the things I first learned from my parents is you look at your parents as a child and you think they're just who they are and that's who they're going to be. But as I grew up, I started noticing that even they were changing and realized that, well, we're all always changing. And if we're not changing, then what's that quote? If you're not changing, you're dying, or something like that. And so I think that's valid. As married to someone, you will go through blissful years and you will go through not so blissful years. And it's what you do to get back on that track. But both people, and I counsel patients on this all the time, if you want the marriage to work and you're putting in the hard effort, the other person has to reciprocate that work. If they're not, then that's okay. Then you guys are going parallel and there's only one option. But if you want it to work and they don't, then it's going to make its own decision. But if you both want it to work, I fully believe that as a God-honoring marriage, everything can be resolved, everything can be healed, and you can be stronger afterwards. I heard another quote or story recently that what makes a great friend or what makes a family, what is that? And it's really the way they explained it was it's the things you weather hard things with. It's the person you do difficult things with, you have problems with, the people that are closest to you, the friends that are close to you. Maybe I should use that friends, like not genetic relative that you're stuck with. Like the people that you would call your best friends, they've probably been through some really tough stuff with you. Mm-hmm. And you can have this great character that's nearby and an even better character, personality, charisma, whatever. But if you haven't weathered tough stuff with that person, they're not going to be the first one you call. It's the one that has you've gone through things with and you're still with that person. You might have even been in a blow-up fight with that person, but now you've made it through and now they're even closer. So it's weird that adversity actually draws us closer to those people if you can overcome it. And I think in today's age, especially in the swipe culture, if things aren't working out, it's like, okay, well, I'll just go back to the app and find another one. Like, well, you're going to take your problems to that relationship too. So I agree. Marriage is difficult, but if you're doing the work, it is simply the greatest thing on earth that I would never trade in my entire life. And this person, I reminded Laura of it recently. I love my kids. I would take a bullet for them. I love my stepkids. I don't know if I'd take bullets for them on every day, but I'd take bullets for them. But they all leave. Yeah. Your wife does not. Your spouse does not. Yeah. She's there the rest of your life. So yes, be there for your kids. Yes, be there for your stepkids and your family, but you really better be there for your partner because you can make the most amazing life out of that, or it can just be crummy and basic.
Yeah. I think about that sometimes. Tiger being 15, Ocean being 10. I'm like, in 8 years possible, it's just Tatiana and I. Yeah. Like the boys are out doing their thing, and that's
it's a common divorce time. Yeah. Empty nest is because now you've lost your purpose. The purpose of us being together was to take care of kids. So you also have to make sure you're nurturing that relationship. It's not just, we're not just here for the kids. We're here for each other. We serve each other. I heard Craig Groeschel give a sermon on marriage, and that was the single greatest thing I took away from it is he goes, you got to serve your wife. You got to sacrifice everything for your wife. You got to do everything humanly possible to serve that woman. And as he was saying, I was like, well, if I did all that, that would kind of suck. If I always sacrificed for that person, then that wouldn't be a very good marriage. That wouldn't be balanced at all. Until he kept preaching it and it kept sinking and I kept reflecting on it. And then I realized, wait a minute, if Laura's always sacrificing and trying to beat me to the serving, then that's called balanced. I'm always serving you. You're always serving me. And like, okay, well, I thought I was bringing you coffee, but you brought me coffee kind of deal. And so I think that's the main thing I try to take to my marriage is how can I serve you? How can I bring value to you today? Because if I serve you, you serve me. Like it's selfish. I serve you and you serve me. Yeah. It's beautiful when it's done right.
You guys have a great thing.
Oh my goodness. Just amazing.
And you two work together.
Thanks for listening today, fellas. If you got value from this episode, I ask that you take 1 second right now and you share this with another dad in your life that you respect, that you know is committed to becoming a better man, family man, and businessman. And on that note, I want to honor you for choosing growth. Your family will thank you years from now for all the effort that you're putting in to learn the strategies so you can show up more fully for them today. Take care.